WNZK, Dearborn Heights, Detroit, your ethnic superstation, 690 days, 680 nights.
سوا على الهوا سوا على الهوا يأتيكم عبر أثير إذاعة
صباح الخير أمريكا.
من يوم اللي اتكون يا وطني الموج كنا سوا.
يمكنكم الآن متابعة برنامج سوا على الهواء على قناة ميوزك لايف عبر الديش نتورك شانل 633. البرنامج يبث لمستمعين يوم الثلاثاء الساعة 8 صباحا حسب التوقيت الشرقي للولايات المتحدة في ميشيغان وتوليدو وأوهايو ووينزر كندا على الموجة المتوسطة wnzk 690 AM، ولمستمعين في مناطق واشنطن وفرجينيا وميريلاند على الموجة المتوسطة wdmv 700 AM. يمكنكم الاستماع للبرنامج عبر الاتصال من أي هاتف على الرقم 702-489-0120. يتلقى البرنامج اتصالاتكم مباشرة من داخل الولايات المتحدة على الهاتف رقم 248-557-3300. الإضافة عبر سكايب US Arab Radio. للاستماع للبودكاست ushammedia.com.
Here's your host for today's program, renowned journalist Renée Ahee.
Good morning and welcome everyone. I'm especially delighted to be hosting Sawa al-Hawa this morning because the discussion we're going to have today is about the most important subject of all, the education of our teachers, the education of our children. Maybe they didn't realize it, but the Michigan Department of Education selected 3 consecutive Michigan Teachers of the Year who are of Middle Eastern descent. I don't believe this has ever happened before. For our community, it is a cause for much celebration and recognition. Today, I'm joined by 2014's Michigan Teacher of the Year, Gary Aboud Jr. from the Grosse Pointe School District, 2015's Michigan Teacher of the Year, Melody Arabo from the Walled Lake School District, and this year's Michigan Teacher of the Year, Rick Joseph from the Birmingham School District. We will be talking about their individual successes and their views on the educational system in Michigan, disparities that exist between Michigan's school districts, and what individual citizens like you and me can do to make critical changes to the state's future. So I hope you'll all stay with us. I want to congratulate each of you, Gary, Melody, and Rick. I'm thrilled to have this opportunity to talk with you about your great recognition, especially as we join the rest of our country during Teacher Appreciation Week, which is the first week, everybody, in May each year, and today especially is Teacher Appreciation Day nationwide. It's an especially great honor to have you with us. Ladies and gentlemen, Rick is spending this National Teacher Appreciation Day in Washington, D.C., and meeting President Obama. Thanks for calling in, Rick.
You're welcome, Renee. It's my pleasure to be with you.
Gentle listeners, once we get started, I hope you'll all take part in the dialogue by calling 248-557-3300. Gary Aboud teaches chemistry, physics, and computer applications at Grosse Pointe North High School. Gary is also a member of the board of the MEMIC Foundation. He's a professional development presenter and co-host of the Teachers of the Year radio show on BAM Radio. He earned his bachelor's degree from Wayne State University, master's degree from Saginaw Valley State University, and has a school administrator's certificate. Gary is the dad to a little girl, not yet ready for school, but she thinks she is. With us also is Melody Arabo. Melody has been a 3rd grade teacher at Keith Elementary in the Walled Lake School District since 2002. She is an NAE master teacher, a Michigan Educator Voice Lead Fellow, Oakland County's Elite 40 Under 40 winner, a Detroit Public TV Board of Trustees member, and the 2015 Michigan Teacher of the Year. Melody is a wife, mother of 3, speaker, presenter, bully prevention advocate, and author of 2 books, Chaldean for Kids and The Diary of a Real Bully. And Rick Joseph is a national board-certified teacher and has taught 5th and 6th grade at Covington School in the Birmingham School District since 2002. He previously served as a bilingual educator and trainer for 9 years in the Chicago district. Rick has a bachelor's degree in English from the University of Michigan and a master's degree in elementary education from the University of Illinois in Chicago. Rick has been married for 21 years and has 2 teenage boys. Welcome, all of you. Thank you so much for being here. Let's get started, Gary, with you. Please explain to our listeners the process that leads to the selection of the Michigan Teacher of the Year.
Absolutely. So thanks for having us, Renee. The process really starts at the local level with a nomination. So any teacher at any school, K through 12, throughout Michigan, can be nominated by a student, a fellow colleague, or a parent. And once they're nominated, the State Department of Education extends an invitation to them to apply for the position of Michigan Teacher of the Year. They complete an application that includes things about their curriculum vitae and their resume experiences, videos of them teaching in their classroom, as well as essays responding to questions about education advocacy and policy. So beyond that presentation that they do in that application, it's reviewed at the local, regional, and state level until finalists are chosen to be interviewed at the State Department of Ed, and finally one winner is selected by the State Department of Education to represent the over 100,000 teachers in all of Michigan's schools.
What an honor. Terrific. So there are 100,000 teachers. How many nominations on average does the Department of Ed get?
That's a great question, and I think it probably varies very much from year to year, but they're definitely between hundreds and between thousands of applicants and nominations throughout the state in the K-12 spectrum, I think, each year, from regions, as far south and east as Detroit area to the Upper Peninsula as well.
This is a huge honor, and it's hysterical for our community because we have 3 consecutive Middle Eastern teachers. Melody, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Did you know that you were being nominated, and what was your reaction when you found out?
I did not know that I was being nominated, and I didn't even think it was real. When you have a letter in your mailbox at school from the state superintendent, it's not something you expect. So I actually went to my principal to make sure that it was legitimate because I just wasn't aware of how the process worked. I kind of assumed that if you won your school Teacher of the Year, then your district, then you'd be up for county, and then you'd be up for state. But I learned that that's not the way that they do it. So I was thrilled and excited and decided to move forward with the application process.
Who nominated you? Do you know?
Yes, I did find out later that it was a parent of a student in my class.
Isn't that beautiful? That's
yes.
terrific. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Now to you, Rick. Rick Joseph, as Gary said, there are over 100,000 teachers in Michigan. What's your job as the 2016 Michigan Teacher of the Year?
Well, Renee, first of all, thanks again for having all 3 of us on the show. It's truly an honor to be with you this morning and to share the story of the Michigan Teacher of the Year and this significant recognition. This year, I'm very fortunate, as Melody and Gary were also fortunate, to receive release time from our district. So I work in Birmingham Public Schools, and I was afforded the opportunity to have a guest teacher in my classroom all year long, which basically means that at my 5th and 6th grade level, I have a teacher who is with my students every day, and she has been with my students every day since the beginning of the school year. So for the first quarter of the year, I mentored her and helped her get acclimated to our school in my classroom so that she then was able to take over full-time as the lead teacher. And that freed me up to leave the classroom and tour the state, as Gary said, from southeast Michigan, where we live, all the way up to the Upper Peninsula and everywhere in between, south to north, east to west. And so my job this year is essentially to visit schools throughout our state. And I've tried my best to visit traditional public schools in traditional public education districts, as well as charter schools. I've also visited private schools and even Catholic schools. And my purpose is to witness the amazing work that teachers are doing in classrooms with their students each and every day. And so I go into classrooms and schools. I take lots of pictures. I have a blog where I post photographs and a brief write-up of my visits, and then I tweet that information out so that I can give people sort of an educator's view, or what some people say, a real feel for what life is like in classrooms around the state. And so my job is really to be a storyteller, to be an advocate, to be a servant leader, to be a witness, very much following in the work that Melody and and Gary have done and continue to do as Teachers of the Year. And we have an expression as Michigan Teacher of the Year, once a Teacher of the Year, always a Teacher of the Year. So this work as advocates, as bridge builders, is very much something that we continue to do after our year of recognition, we call it, is finished. So the new Michigan Teacher of the Year will be named the third week of May, I believe May 20th. A press release will be issued, and then there will be what's called the Passing of the Torch celebration at the State Board of Education meeting in June. One of the jobs of the Michigan Teacher of the Year, in addition to being one who goes around and visits schools and tells a story of what's happening in buildings around the state, is we are members of the State Board of Education in Lansing as non-voting members. So once a month we attend State Board meetings where we are able to offer comment, again, from a teacher's perspective on policy initiatives that are happening or that are being proposed at the state level. And so we inform the State Board of Ed from the mind of a practicing teacher how issues may affect schools each and every day throughout our state. Additionally, we as Teachers of the Year, by virtue of this recognition, we have people's ear. You know, when people hear that we're Teacher of the Year, then they tend to listen a little bit more intently, as opposed to if we were presenting ourselves simply as our, teachers in our classroom, in our regular jobs, if you will. But this level of distinction affords us audiences with everyone from Governor Snyder to Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley to state representatives and state senators on the education committees, on the appropriations committees. And so we are able to serve as what we refer to as nonpartisan political actors, meaning that we have a chance to express our opinions and share them with people who make decisions about education throughout our state.
Well, a question about once a Teacher of the Year, always a Teacher of the Year, does that ability to have a voice at the Department of Education level still remain, Melody, or is it when you are the Teacher of the Year?
Well, you begin those things as Teacher of the Year, and then they do continue afterwards. So you really start to find your niche, and you start to find the things that are important to you, and then the things that you can bring value to,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can continue that work after. So it's in a different capacity because you might go back to your classroom or become an administrator or do something else, but it does open up more opportunities, and then to be able to continue the things and the work that you start that year.
Interesting. Each of you has in your bio some area of specialization, which I have found extremely exciting. Gary, you are a STEM advocate, STEM meaning science, technology, something, what, E and math? What is it?
Engineering, yeah.
Engineering and math. Melody, you have become a bully protection advocate, meaning that you've written a book about that. Rick, you have specialized in bilingual education, and you have taken a stance for the openness to all students of whatever orientation, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and so on and so forth. Is that what you meant, Melody, by grabbing your specialty and advocating for those?
Well, that's one of the things I loved about the Teacher of the Year experience, is that it wasn't about fitting a specific type. It was about taking the things that are important to you and being able to share those and advocate for those things. So, that's what makes it great, is each of us have been so different.
Yes.
And have been able to, use our passions to try to reach people throughout the state and through the country. So yeah, I think it's great that the state program allows you to be unique, allows you to do work that's important to you, but then you learn so much along the way, and then you might become interested in things that weren't as important to you before, and now become a part of your work, every single day. So,
listeners, we invite you to call in to speak with Gary and Melody and Rick in a moment. We will be going to commercial, and we will come back in just a moment so you can talk with them. We'll have more discussion with the Michigan Teachers of the Year, Gary Aboud, Melody Arabo, and Rick Joseph.
It's never too early to get your child on the right track. From their first words to first grade, Dreamy Children's Center in Troy works closely with parents to provide an experience that goes beyond early education. The highly qualified and experienced staff use a variety of programs that can help nurture important personality traits like responsibility, independence, problem solving, motivation, and respect. They also have educational programs ranging from preschooling for infants, toddlers, transitional toddlers, and pre-K to Montessori-approved programs and bilingual curriculums for young children. They're open from 6 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., can provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner with snacks in between, and can also arrange for after-school pickup. Dreamy Children's Center in Troy is located at 37373 DeQuinder, just above 16 Mile Road, and can be found on Facebook at Dreamy Children's Center. Ask about the free preschool program. Call today, 248-680-9170, 248-680-9170.
سوا على الهوا سوا على الهوا يأتيكم عبر أثير إذاعة
صباح الخير صباح الخير أمريكا أمريكا.
من يوم اللي اتكون يا وطني الموج كنا سوا.
إذا كنت امرأة عاملة وتبحثين عن مكان آمن، بيئة صحية تعليمية وتربوية متكاملة لأبنائك، إذا لابد أن تزوري حضانة Dreamy Children Centers، مؤسسة تعليمية تربوية تقدم كافة الخدمات والبرامج الخاصة لأطفالكم من سن الرضاعة وحتى سن 12. تعمل Dreamy Children Centers لأطفالكم على مدار العام، وتقدم لأبنائكم برامج متميزة مع خدمات النقل والترفيه، مجازون من قبل ولاية ميشيغان ويقبلون FIA وبرنامج مانتسوري. تقدم وجبات غذائية صحية أسعارهم مناسبة ومدروسة. تفتح Dreamy Children Centers من الاثنين وحتى يوم الجمعة من 6 صباحا إلى 6:30 مساء. اسألوا عن البرنامج التعليمي المجاني لعمر 4 سنوات أو زوروهم على 37373 ديكوندر رود في مدينة تروي. للمعلومات اتصلوا على 248-680-9170 248-680-9170. Dreamy Children Centers، المدرسة الحلم لأبنائكم.
Welcome back, everyone, to Sawa al-Hawa. This is Renée Ahee, your host, for a most interesting program with the 3 Michigan Teachers of the Year, Gary Aboud Jr., Melody Arabo, and Rick Joseph. We have Jerry on the line. Jerry, thank you for calling. What's your question?
Thank you, Renee. Good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you for taking my call. To be honest with you, Renee, I'm very jealous because you are sitting with the new ambassadors to the knowledge. I will call them our new ambassadors, Mr. Gary Aboud Jr., Miss Melody Arabo, Mr. Rick Joseph. You guys, as a golden medal with the American Middle Eastern, we put you in our chest. We are honored to have great people like you guys. This is what the true American dream mean. You participate in this great country. And this is, you remind me of former President John F. Kennedy when he said, ask not what your country could do for you, ask what you could do for your country. You guys are wonderful. And Renee, if you allow me,
yes, sir.
There was a poetry in Middle East in the 50s, and he said in Arabic, he described the teachers as messengers from God. And if you allow me, in Arabic, the phrase was, قم للمعلم وفق التبجيل كاد المعلم أن يكون رسولا.
How beautiful.
Renee, this is a beautiful word, and they deserve it. Yesterday, Renee, I was in a radio talk show with Miss Mildred Gaddish, was about the strike in Detroit, the federal teacher union. Mm-hmm. And I give a beautiful prescription about the teachers. I say, I know our students that are in Detroit, they are the victim of this strike. The students, they are the recipe, and teachers, they are the good cook who prepared that recipe. I congratulate Mr. Gary Aboud, Miss Melody Arabo, Mr. Rick Joseph. Congratulations to all of you. We are very proud of you. Look what Dr. Muna Atisha did in the Flint, Michigan crisis. She's all over. And we have Miss Renee, so many. Look at the attorney, Miss Jomana Kairuz. Look where she is. I will nominate her as a Supreme Court if they allow me to do that. And Miss Renee, look at Miss Layla Al-Husseini, the queen of the radio talk show. Look at Miss Nidal Garmo. Look at Miss Iman Daman, and more and more and more. We have great people.
We do
the
indeed.
Middle Eastern people, the Chaldean and the Arab, they are a part of this great nation.
Jerry, thank you
God
very
bless
much.
you again, Mr. Gay Aboud, Miss Melody Arabo, Mr. Rick Joseph. We are proud of you.
Thank you,
And
Jerry.
Miss Renee, thank you so much for honoring those people. And the only thing, Miss Renee, I do have one small question to the three honorable teachers about use of Redland. As a father, I raised 4 kids. I'm proud of them. They are no more kids. They graduate from college. The use of Redland, will the teacher encourage the school district use Redland towards the kids who they are very active? Because it happened to me when my son Sean, was in a preschool, and they say he was very active. So I challenged the school district as the superintendent of City Ferndale, and I didn't allow them to give my son Redland, because Redland, I say, is the beginning step of teaching kids to get used to the drugs. I will love to hear their answer from the radio. Thank you again, and I'm sorry I talked too much.
Thank you, Jerry. Let's start at the younger grades, then. Let's talk, Melody, about what you're experiencing in the low grades, and then Rick, maybe you could chime in, and then Gary at the high school level.
Well, that's a hard question only because I'm not a medical professional,
Yeah.
And I think that that's important for parents and kids and teachers to remember that anything that has to do with medical diagnosis should come from a doctor. And I believe it's just every family's choice on whether or not they would want to pursue some sort of medication. You know, in my opinion as a teacher, I don't even need to know if a child is medicated unless the parents want to share that with me, because if a child is active in my classroom, there are ways to manage that. There are ways to allow them opportunities to be active. You know, it's very rare in my 3rd grade classroom that kids are sitting for a long period of time. We have all sorts of different configurations of furniture, bean bags, standing tables, you know, yoga balls. And so I just try to create an environment where activity is important and embraced. And so medication is not something I put too much thought into. I think it's a really personal choice for families.
Thank you. Rick, do you have a position on that?
Well, I mean, I fundamentally agree with what Melody said. I think ultimately the choice to administer medication or not is a decision that needs to be made between a family and their medical provider. That being said, there's certainly a number of different opinions about the use of medication and its role in treating children who may deal with ADHD or ADD. I know that there are families who try a number of different approaches and in order to address issues related to attention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity with their students. People sometimes start with non-medical interventions, as Melody mentioned, like seating preferences, being closer to the board to minimize distraction in the classroom, enabling kids to sit on yoga balls or chairs or devices that enable them to move around in flexibility, or even stand, enabling kids to work on the floor or in positions where they can physically move their body. Also, there are a number of other considerations like deep breathing. There's something called biofeedback, which can be very effective for children who have attention issues and hyperactivity issues, where children are taught through deep breathing to regulate their heart rate and their breath rate, and in bringing those two into balance, that can sometimes help provide calm to children's systems. That being said, there's a significant number of families who have opted for the use of medication, and with some children I've seen a significant change in children's ability to attend to school and to be successful in academic settings. But ultimately, yes, it is very much a decision that has to be made between a family and their doctor after a number of different considerations, ideally with the input from classroom teachers and school psychologists and social workers who see a number of different children each day and the ways in which attention can affect their ability to learn and be successful in school.
Gary, what do you see at the high school level with regard to not only Ritalin but other drugs? Because the abuse of prescription drugs. I recently had I guess it was a pleasure to bring 400 people together to talk about the opioid use, particularly among young people. Do you see a lot of that in the high school, or how do you manage that?
You know, this is a really great and important issue, I think, for us to be talking about the medication crisis and the issue where it gets abused or used improperly and can turn into substance abuse issues for teens and adolescents. Mm-hmm. I do want to say, to comment directly to Jerry's question, that while I don't think any of us know his particular experience with a school or an educator, it's really important that every listener knows that schools do not prescribe and cannot prescribe medication to any of their students. But what they can do is give feedback to parents and families to let them know things that they are observing about their children in any school setting, and then they can offer that information to be part of the story that parents use in working with their healthcare providers to make decisions. Yeah. But I do not want anyone to leave thinking that schools are pushing drugs or recommending or even giving, as it was stated, because that's really important there. But that all being said, I think as it would be with any other medical condition, I remember myself in 5th grade, I was having trouble reading the board, but I was in denial that I was having trouble reading the board. My history teacher called my parents and said, you know, he's squinting a lot in class. Have you noticed this at home? And things like that was kind of the conversation. And it led my parents to say, well, maybe we should get you a vision exam. And it turned out that I had a congenital disease in my eyes that was taking my vision slowly, and eventually I needed cornea transplants. Now, the teacher pointed out just something that they observed, something that they noticed about me, and informed my parents so that they could use that as one piece of data in the kind of bigger decision-making process about supporting their child. And I think that in the same way, we as educators need to work collaboratively with families and professionals in a variety of different settings to make sure that we're supporting children, both with what we see and the needs that parents express that their kids might have. But in terms of the direct question about drug use and prescription for attention deficit disorder, you know, it's definitely something that we hear a lot more about these days, but it's still a disease that a lot of people don't know a whole lot about. It still suffers from a stigma that we think it is the Dennis the Menace sort of disease, that it's for hyperactive young boys and that's what ADHD is. But really, if we look into the science of it and what we know now, decades later, this is something that really is tied closely to brain development and the cognitive function of our brains from a young age through adulthood. And so it's a very complex issue that I don't think could be minimized to whether you give drugs or not, and it's definitely something to consider for learning and for parents being able to support their children in a variety of ways.
Thank you all for answering that question. Is Zuhair still with us, Mike? Zuhair, are you still with us?
Zuhair Abdelhaq.
Good morning. Thank you for calling.
Good morning. Thank you for this program. And I want to congratulate the teachers. That makes me so happy to hear that some Middle Eastern teachers are chosen for this, this kind of award. I am a chair in Citizen Committee in Crestwood School District in Dearborn Heights to pass $35 million bond for renovating the schools, which didn't have bonds since 1967. 49 years they haven't passed a bond to fix the schools.
Wow.
My question is, for the teachers. Anyone can answer me. What is the correlation between good school environment and the accomplishment of the kids? Have they seen increase in their performance, in their grades, in their school activities when they have good school, good environment? And did they notice anything bad performance if the roofs are leaking, they don't have sports facilities, they don't have a music facility? Can any one of them, please tell us the importance of having good schools?
So here we're going to take a moment to listen to our wonderful sponsors and their messages, and we'll be back to answer that question for you in just a moment. Stay with us, everybody.
I am.
It's never too early to get your child on the right track. From their first words to first grade, Dreamy Children's Center in Troy works closely with parents to provide an experience that goes beyond early education. The highly qualified and experienced staff use a variety of programs that can help nurture important personality traits like responsibility, independence, problem solving, motivation, and respect. They also have educational programs ranging from preschooling for infants, toddlers, transitional toddlers, and pre-K to Montessori-approved programs and bilingual curriculums for young children. They're open from 6 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., can provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner with snacks in between, and can also arrange for after-school pickup. Dreamy Children's Center in Troy is located at 37373 DeQuinder, just above 16 Mile Road, and can be found on Facebook at Dreamy Children's Center. Ask about the free preschool program. Call today, 248-680-9170, 248-680-9170.
سوا على الهوا سوا على الهوا يأتيكم عبر أثير إذاعة
صباح الخير أمريكا
من يوم اللي اتكون يا وطن الموج كنا سوا.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Sawa al-Hawa. I'm Renée Ahee, your host, and we are going to address the wonderful question and an important question, actually, that Zuhair has just asked our teachers. Rick, if you're still with us, can you address that? Because that's one of your platforms, we understand.
Well, I think the caller's question about the extent to which the physical environment of the school could impact teaching and learning is an essential question, especially given the implications for what we've seen in Detroit specifically and the sickouts that occurred in January where much attention was brought to a couple of schools in Detroit, in particular Spain Elementary Middle School, where there were issues with the gym being closed because the floor was buckled from water damage, and Osborne High School, where the ceiling tile had fallen in because there were leaks in the roof and that sort of thing. I think it seems pretty apparent to most people that that a child's learning environment ought to be fundamentally safe. There ought to be a measure of physical safety for all concerned. That means that it should be comfortable, reasonably comfortable, that people should be in an atmosphere that promotes both physical safety and emotional safety. So the idea that we would make sure that funds were available to provide at a minimum physically safe environments would be pretty obvious, and I think it's absolutely essential. It's certainly the classroom teacher's job to do their best to mitigate whatever challenges may exist. And certainly we hear lots of stories of teachers in Detroit who spend their own money to make sure that their classroom environments are warm, welcoming places, and they do whatever they can to deal with issues, everything from the temperature fluctuating wildly in classrooms to teachers in Flint who have to deal with using bottled water or having to enable their kids to wash their hands in other ways because they can't wash their hands at the sink in the bathroom, for example. So these facilities questions really do speak to this notion of equity and providing equitable physical spaces in schools so that all students can learn and be the best that they can be.
Gary just wanted to pipe in with a statistic, Rick, that can really answer Zuhair's question about the performance of our kids.
Yeah, so thank you for that. Just to add on to what Rick said, it definitely is an issue of equity when it comes down to it, but the direct question about what's the effect that a bond or money to improve infrastructure can have on achievement. So Stanford University just recently released a study where they compared the socioeconomic status of students in different grades to their achievement across the country. And for example, the kind of tagline statistic from this study was that sixth graders in the richest school districts around the country were 4 grade levels ahead in their achievement than students in the poorest school districts of the same grade level, if you look at it countrywide. And so I think that really telling statistic lets us know that there is an impact and a difference that having more resources and having more access can have on the achievement of students for many of the reasons that Rick said, that it takes away those basic concerns about needs and safety and lets everyone focus on the main thing, which is teaching and learning.
And part of the issue that I have about the question of the physical safety and citizenry funding education is funding the buildings too and keeping them safe. I have a question for all of you. What do citizens who don't even have children in school anymore, what is our role as citizens in helping to educate our children by providing funding for school safety, for the physical condition of our schools? And we know that in the richest districts, that's not as important or as critical an issue as in the poorer districts. So it becomes a question of equity, but it also becomes a question for me of funding. So, Melody, could you address some of that?
Yeah, I mean, really what's been swirling in my mind since this conversation started is that, in my opinion, teaching is the hardest job that you can have. It's so complex, and there are so many things that you have to be prepared for and tend to. So just in general, the profession is challenging. But what the teachers in Detroit and teachers in Flint are doing is way harder than anything that I have to do. And so I think that it's really important to note that while we're already doing a difficult job, to do that in an atmosphere that is unsafe or that is uncomfortable, and what that does to the students and what that does to the staff is critical and needs to be addressed. And so I just want to say that I support the teachers in Detroit 100%. And as citizens who are watching events unfold, I think that support is the most important thing. You know, there's a lot of negativity in the media, and people want to be upset with teachers. And actually, just on my way here, I heard a conversation about people blaming the teachers, and I just think that's so unfair. I mean, you have to think about going to work and doing everything that you possibly can for these kids when there are so many disparities that you have to deal with. And on top of that, having to do that without being compensated is really just too much to ask, and I think that people need to consider that. So as citizens, even if they don't have children in school, I think that they need to publicly support the teachers and what's happening in these areas, and to advocate for funding, because there's a big difference between equality, where everybody gets the same amount, or equity, where it's dispersed differently so that people who don't have what they need get what they need. So that's just key, and I've been saddened to see the tone around what's happening in Detroit, because these teachers are already working way harder than I have ever had to, and they deserve to be treated with respect for that.
Well, I want to thank all three of you for answering that question, and Zuhair for asking it. This beautifully segues into my next question about the fact that our Middle Eastern American families, our parents, have highly supported and valued education. And one of the things that we want for our children is the best possible education. We do what we can, we give them the best, but it's very interesting. Many of them then encourage their kids to become doctors and lawyers and engineers as if no other professions. I mean, I've even tried to get people into media studies and things of that nature, and our Middle Eastern American parents tend to want to have their kids do these high-end jobs, but they all had teachers too. The doctors, the lawyers, the engineers all had to go through school. So to me, teaching is a noble profession, and I would like to ask all of you, why did you choose teaching as your life's work? Rick, you want to start?
Certainly, Renee. Throughout high school and college, I wanted to go to law school, and I had visions of becoming an attorney. And it wasn't until the very end of my college career, after I had taken the LSAT exam and realized that my scores on the LSAT were not as high as I would have liked, that I reconsidered law school, partly because I learned about something at that time referred to as the achievement gap, or now referred to more commonly as the equity gap. It's similar to what we've been talking about and what Gary referenced in the Stanford study. Basically, the reality that we have two different systems for education in the United States. One that serves people who are largely white Europeans, and then the others that serves people in general of color, particularly people who come from lower income backgrounds. And so what the research showed me was that at the high school level, for example, by the time a kid graduates from high school, if you're the average white kid, you're maybe performing at grade level, but the average African American or Latino or Native American child is maybe 3 to 4 years behind that average white child in terms of academic readiness and college and career readiness. And at the time I was bilingual. I had taken Spanish and I liked Spanish. It was my second language. Growing up, my family only spoke English to me. They were part of that melting pot generation, and my parents knew some Arabic, but English was the language in our home. So Spanish became my second language, and I realized that I could use my language ability to address this issue of the achievement gap and address these equity issues. And that became kind of an important issue for me. And I realized that I wanted to dedicate my life and my professional work at the time to helping address this gap, because it was fundamentally unfair and to me seemed fundamentally un-American. Your previous caller talked about the American dream and how sort of Gary and Melody and I represent the best of the American dream, and I feel incredibly grateful and incredibly fortunate to have had the opportunities that I have had. But there are many Americans who work very hard and fight very hard on a daily basis to just survive and to get by, and the quality of the public services that they receive in the public education system is not the same. And at the very least, as Melody said, at the very least, I wanted to be part of a solution that highlighted the issues that existed and still exist. And I also wanted to be an advocate. I wanted to be the kind of teacher who tried to fight for a system where people who have the most needs are receiving the most services, and people who have relatively less needs are still getting those needs met, but that there's an acknowledgement that we do not operate on a level playing field in the United States of America. And so that was why I decided to become a teacher.
Melody, do you have a story that compelled you to take on teaching?
Well, I actually never planned on being a teacher. It wasn't something that I thought about or dreamed of growing up. I've always loved kids, but it just never was on my radar. And so I was in college to go into marketing. I wanted to make commercials. I wanted to do something in media. And during college, somebody approached me about a job at an elementary school, and they needed someone who could speak Chaldean and could work with elementary kids. And to me, it just sounded like a great job to have while in college. I had no experience, and I was only 19, but I was very fortunate that the principal took a chance on me, and because really, essentially, she completely changed the course of my life. But within a very short time, I realized how powerful and impactful this profession could be, because the very first week that I started at an elementary school, I fell in love with the atmosphere. I fell in love with the community feel. You know, the teachers were so warm and welcoming. The kids would just light up when you walk into a room, even if they didn't know who you were. There was just this level of excitement. And then once I started working with kids, I saw very quickly what an impact I could make with them, and just what a connection we could have with one another. So I loved it, and by the end of the first month, I had changed my my major, and then the following year I went to Michigan State because they had the #1 college for education, and then got to come right back and do what I love. So to me it was really just an experience that showed me, what my calling was.
Gary?
Well, this is going to probably surprise you, but growing up, I always wanted to be a physician. And so I guess I fit sort of the stereotype in some ways to what you were referring to with this question. But for me, the journey to becoming a teacher was one that I hadn't considered as even a possibility before. And so growing up, everyone around me knew me as MD or bust. It was, I was going to be a physician, and that's what I knew myself as. That was my identity. But I guess for me, the story changed after I finished my undergrad at Wayne State, did the pre-med program, worked in medical research for a couple of years at a local hospital and clinic, and was getting ready to hit submit on my med school applications when a really important event happened in my life that made me realize that I had maybe gotten it all wrong, that I had maybe been looking at a different option as not really possibility, that I had not really been considering teaching, but it had come up over and over again in my life experiences, that teaching was there and that it was something I was good at, and it actually allowed me to save lives in a lot of ways like I wanted to do becoming a physician. So when that all kind of hit me, it just really pulled me and called me to change gears and consider the teaching pathway as my career trajectory that I never had before.
Amazing. And the students, you have changed their lives and are changing their lives daily. We're going to go for commercial. Please stay with us, everybody. Call in at 248-557-3300. We'll be right back.
إذا كنت امرأة عاملة وتبحثين عن مكان آمن، بيئة صحية تعليمية وتربوية متكاملة لأبنائك، إذا لابد أن تزوري حضانة Dreamy Children Centers، مؤسسة تعليمية تربوية تقدم كافة الخدمات والبرامج الخاصة لأطفالكم من سن الرضاعة وحتى سن 12. تعمل Dreamy Children Centers لأطفالكم على مدار العام، وتقدم لأبنائكم برامج متميزة مع خدمات النقل والترفيه، مجازون من قبل ولاية ميشيغان ويقبلون FIA وبرنامج مانتسوري. تقدم وجبات غذائية صحية، أسعارهم مناسبة ومدروسة. تفتح Dreamy Children Centers من الاثنين وحتى يوم الجمعة من 6 صباحا إلى 6:30 مساء. اسألوا عن البرنامج التعليمي المجاني لعمر 4 سنوات أو زوروهم على 37373 ديكوندر رود في مدينة تروي. للمعلومات اتصلوا على 248-680-9170 248-680-9170. Dreamy Children Centers، المدرسة الحلم لأبنائكم. سوا على الهوا، سوا على طول، سوا على الهوا، يأتيكم عبر أثير إذاعة
صباح الخير. صباح الخير أمريكا.
من يوم اللي اتكون يا وطن الموج كنا سوا.
Welcome back, everybody, to Sawa al-Hawa. This is Renée Ahee, your host today, and I'm joined by the 3 wonderful Middle Eastern teachers, Michigan Teachers of the Year, Rick Joseph, Melody Arabo, and Gary Aboud, who would like to finish up on the statement that he had made earlier. Gary, please.
So just to the call earlier and some of the questions that have come up about choosing teaching as a pathway, it's Teacher Appreciation Day, and to a lot of people that may sound like get an apple or get some coffee for your teacher, and it's really not about that. It's about acknowledging that in our lives we all have teachers, whether it was in a formal classroom or somewhere else in our lives, that have inspired us or shown us a pathway that we didn't know was there before. And my story of how I became a teacher from wanting to become a physician was just that an unexpected teacher in my life who was not in a classroom showed me something that I didn't know was there before. And that's what I really wanted to do with my life, was to show other people a way to see where they didn't think they could before. And I would just say that anybody who is maybe considering that it's not a viable pathway or it's not a great profession to consider, that it absolutely is on par from my experience with what I wanted to do as a physician, and it's turned out to be a decision I do not regret to shift gears to this career pathway. It's intellectual work, it's complex work, it's creative work, it's just as demanding as many of these other professions that we all seek so highly, and it's definitely something to consider if anyone wants to use their intellectual and creative talents it's definitely something that you shouldn't shake off and not consider.
Thank you for that closing comment on that. And you have brought up in this recent conversation about the inequities in our system, and I would like to shift from your personal successes to something that you deal with every day. The interesting thing about the three of you, you come from suburban, well-heeled communities, and so some of the issues that Zuhair raised in Crestwood, and you don't have that same kind of crumbling infrastructure and so on and so forth. I'd like to talk a little bit about and ask you to comment on how do we fix this inequity, certainly by teaching your students to be equitable in how they treat people and so on and so forth is a big start. But this has happened over many years. In Crestwood it was 49 years, for heaven's sake. So, but the inequities in the system also have been developing along that time. And I'd like you to address, please, and Rick, maybe we can start with you, as equity is also a big issue for you. Where are we in this country, and how do we fix it? Is it a matter of funding? And if it's not a matter of funding, what actually is it?
That's a key question. I think that this whole question of equity, Renee, is so central to our very public school system, and the reality that public education is a bedrock principle. It's a fundamental component of American democracy. So the idea that our system should be more equitable is certainly on the minds of people all over the country. There is a federal initiative known as Equitable Access to Excellent Educators, which the Department of Education and President Obama have put forth as a model for states to follow. And the whole premise is that, as we know, different children go to school in very different environments, depending on their zip code, depending on where they live, and depending on the wealth of their community. So equitable access to excellent educators presumes that this is a reality that we have to meet by creating systems that get really talented, really motivated teachers in the areas of highest need. So we certainly do not want to take anything away from existing public school districts that have resources. Those resources certainly exist from state funding levels that all districts receive, but there's a number of suburban districts that have public education funds where community members donate money. They have fundraisers, and they help enhance programs out of their own pocket. And in many districts around the state, that's simply not the case. So figuring out ways to direct resources to these districts in strategic ways, not simply throwing money, but to be very strategic and very judicious about how we can create systemic change so there can be more stability in high needs districts. That's so important. I've talked to people in Detroit who say that teachers have left the Detroit public schools to go work in suburban districts because the work is easier and there's higher levels of compensation. I've talked to people in Flint who are dealing with the same situation, and this is not new. This has arguably been happening for the last 20, 25 years. So we're certainly aware of it, and it's something we still need to address in very meaningful ways.
For our listeners around the country, we happen to be talking about poorer districts in the state of Michigan, but I'm sure that you have them in your districts as well, in your parts of the country as well, because we're talking about public education countrywide. Gary and Melody, do you have something to add to the question of equity, or how is it a question of funding?
I would like to comment on this, that in my perspective from the high school level, one of the most important things is going to be the culture of a school. It's going to be the community relationships that are built between the educators, the students, and the families. And I'm not going to say that it is the solution, but it is such a crucial component, funding aside, that if we are not all working together in a school community for the same interest of our students, then it's going to be very difficult, even with resources, to be successful. And so there's plenty of research to show that teacher quality is important, that funding can make a difference for basic things like infrastructure, But when it really comes down to it, if we aren't able to get the students to the classrooms for one reason or another, if we're not able to engage parents and families, if we're not able to work together with students and other professionals and their families as a collaborative group, then that culture is going to undermine any of the other efforts that take place. And so building a successful culture is what you typically see in a lot of these areas where they are doing well, is they have a culture of learning. They have academic press that focuses on the same goal together, and it's that engagement piece, I think, as you see in many other businesses and other industries, that when the leaders in an industry or the consumers and the businesses themselves are working together or are engaged together in that same work, that success can happen. And it's no different in education.
I read an article, a 2014 article in Slate.com. It was titled, "What's Holding Back American Teenagers?" And Lawrence Steinberg wrote that our high schools are a disaster. He said that the U.S. is underperforming our economic rivals and that the remediation of our high school students when and if they get to college costs $3 billion a year. And the question I have then for you, Melody, is if we're dealing in an inequitable system and some are not needing remediation, but many are, obviously with $3 billion a year, colleges and the system has to put out to support kids going to college. What is your take?
I really feel like our school structure could use an update. You know, I think that the way we've done school is the way it's always been done. Even though our population has changed, even though our standards have changed, even though, you know, our expectations have changed. So I think that taking a look at the way we do school is really, really important. And to give students opportunities to, you know, to do hands-on learning and to go out into the community and experience different professions and experience being able to give back. The way that our schools are structured now, it doesn't allow for those things. And so I think that that would be a good place to start, is to really look at what do we want kids to be able to know and do to be career and college ready, and then start from the bottom up and say, okay, how can we allow them those opportunities to gain those life experiences? Right now, just being in a classroom from, you know, 8 to 3 is not enough. I think that we need to restructure things so that we can give opportunities for those experiences that they'll need to be active members of their communities, to give back, to you know, to be innovative and to be our next great scientists or physicians or teachers. We have to let them live those things.
The three of you can lead the way with that. Where would we start in doing school differently?
That's such a complex question, and I've given it so much thought, but I've even thought with my third graders, how can I get them out in the community? How can I get them to be working with others, to be giving back, to be doing something that's more meaningful than just a project in the classroom? So that's the types of things that I've been thinking about, and I don't have the answers to that yet, but I would love to be part of the conversations that can make that happen.
Please do, on behalf of our children and our grandchildren. We only have a couple more minutes, and Jerry's on the line. Jerry, you had one quick question, and we need to ask it quickly.
Should be a distinguished guest, Ms. Renee. Thank you. I want to address a question to the three teachers. How do you feel as a teacher if in the morning you see your student, they have a physical child abuse? How are you going to deal with this matter? I know this is very, very touchy subject. And maybe, Ms. Renee, you will have a full program to discuss child abuse if the teacher notices. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you very much. I don't know if we have time to address. That's a biggie when you are noticing child abuse or you suspect something's going on with the child in his or her home. I think I'd like to defer that because Mike is giving me the signal. But as we leave this wonderful conversation, what I'd like to ask all of you who are parents, what do you want your kids to learn from their teachers? Gary?
Yes, for me, as a parent, I would really like to see that my daughter learns not just the things that she needs to know, that she's not just told what to think, but that she's taught how to think and that she's taught how to be able to navigate learning for the rest of her life, because it's not just going to be about what she knows the rest of her life. It'll be how she can go about learning things when it's necessary and having those skills to do so.
Melody?
To me, character traits are much more important than any sort of curriculum. So I want my kids to learn to be confident, to learn how to think, as Gary said, to learn to have empathy and compassion for others, and to be able to give back. So really just those things that are important life skills.
We have to wrap it up because we are out of time. My great thanks to Gary Ahee Jr., Melody Arabo, and Rick Joseph for this wonderful conversation. We will do this again. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day from Sawal Hawa.